The story started in the guild. One of the girls said loudly that she would ask one more time. She asked if that mage was really not there. She said he wore a black robe. The guild worker answered in a worried voice that she was completely sure. There was no such mage in their guild, and she said the girl was probably mistaken. That made the girl angry, and she shouted again, asking if they were saying she had gone crazy. The worker quickly apologized. Their argument caught the attention of the people sitting nearby. They asked what all the noise was about and looked at the two girls. They wondered what members of the White Blades were doing here and guessed they were in some kind of trouble. The girls explained that a strong monster had appeared, and they had barely managed to deal with it. But then a mysterious mage showed up and defeated the monsters easily. Nobody knew who he was because he left right away. They did not even get the chance to question him. Some of the people listening said it sounded like nonsense. One of them said he could not believe such a story. But if it was true, then that mage had saved them. Two men started imagining the girls, thanking them for saving their lives, and said, feeling embarrassed, that something like that could definitely happen. One of them said he felt really jealous. Just then, they noticed a dark-haired guy who started laughing. One of them asked if he had just laughed at them. The guy denied it, but inside he thought it was obviously funny because he, Higashiator, was the mysterious mage they were talking about. He felt happy that he had been reincarnated into this world. He could not believe everyone was talking about him. Still, he kept his identity hidden. He had always dreamed of being the main character who pretended to be an ordinary person. He had always wanted to be a mysterious hero. He had dreamed about that his whole life, even though he never really had much confidence. For 25 years, he had lived a quiet and peaceful life. Then one day, he noticed a child running along the road while a truck was coming straight toward him. He jumped in to save the child, and after that, the result was pretty obvious. He woke up in a bright room, where a cheerful-looking guy welcomed him to the afterlife and said he was something like a god. The god apologized and said he probably did not understand anything yet, so he would explain everything. He said that he had died while trying to save a child. The guy felt like he should be in despair, but before he could say anything, he shouted and asked what had happened to the child. He asked if the child was alive and not hurt. The god said that the child was completely fine. Hearing that made him really happy, and he said it would have been even better if he had survived too, so he could have said he was just passing by and then walked off into the sunset. He joked that later he could have gone home, grabbed a cold drink, and watched the news. The god smiled and said that was a brilliant plan. He said he had really thought everything through. The guy felt a little embarrassed and asked him not to laugh at him. He said that being a mysterious hero was every man's dream. The god said he was not laughing at him at all. In fact, he said he liked the idea. The god explained that when he checked the chronicles of fate, the child was actually supposed to die. The god said that was amazing, and that because of that, he wanted to give him a reward. He said he would grant his small and simple wish. The guy was surprised and asked why he was making fun of his wish. He also asked what that even meant. The god laughed and said he was about to say something really interesting. He asked if he wanted to be reborn in another world. And so, at the age of 25, he ended up in another world. He opened the bag he was carrying and said that the first thing he needed to do was check his situation. He found some really cool clothes, a sword, some books, a healing potion, and what looked like a sleeping bag. He thought that God had given him some starter gear, along with all the basic knowledge he needed about this world. He could read and write the local language, and he also knew the basic history and geography. He felt like he had all the information he needed to survive. On top of that, he had received 3 random events, which meant he could get so-called cheat abilities. The first one said his talent for swordsmanship was average. If he worked hard, he could become a swordsman who was just a little better than a normal one. Second, his talent for elemental magic was complete garbage. He understood everything, of course, but seeing it written so bluntly still hurt. The last and most important thing he got was spatial magic, the kind so simple that even a monkey could learn it. Spatial magic was insane. It had nothing to do with elemental magic at all. It was ancient magic that people had almost forgotten about. One of the basic spells was called expansion. Thanks to that, even a normal backpack became huge on the inside. It basically created something like a spatial pocket. The second spell was teleportation. He could teleport to any place he could see or any place he had been to before. After using teleport, he ended up on top of a high cliff. He looked around and said in surprise that this was the world he had been sent to. He could not believe that he would be able to live however he wanted here. He thought that if he mastered his powers, he might stand out and still stay anonymous. Maybe he could become some kind of mysterious mage. He raised his hands and happily said this was amazing. He said he could not wait anymore. First, he decided he needed to find a city and gather some information. Just then, he heard a loud scream from a woman. He looked to the side and wondered if the locals were being attacked by a huge lizard. From that distance, he could not see it clearly. He thought this really felt like a fantasy world with monsters, swords, and magic. It felt like the perfect tutorial stage in a game. The girls who ran into the huge monster said they never expected to face something like that. They said they were really unlucky. They were not ready for an attack from underground. Thanks to Marin's detection magic, at least nobody had died. They said they had to retreat. One of them said she would cover them and carry everyone out. Someone said there was no way she should be the one doing that, but it was her duty as the leader. They asked if she even understood their situation and if she seriously thought she could hold out with one arm. The injured girl still agreed, started running, and said she had to promise she would come back alive. The girl with the spear stayed behind and said loudly that she did not plan to die. Aisha ran to the unconscious girl sitting by a tree, Min, and said that Lulaton would cover them, so they needed to get out. She pointed her spear at the huge dragon with a smile and told it to try attacking. She said her spear would once again live up to its name as a dragon slayer, and that the monster would be her prey. She jumped, swung her spear, and screamed as she attacked. She landed a strong hit, but she could not even break through the monster's scales. She quickly jumped back and said with a smile that this was what she expected. The thing was insanely tough, so she decided she would just aim for the eyes. Aisha watched the fight and shouted her name. Because of that, Lilithan managed to react to the dragon's tail attack and block it, but the blow was too strong and she got smashed into the ground. Aisha panicked and called her name loudly. Then she noticed the dragon was heading straight for her. With a terrified face, she said she had to do something. But she also thought about what she could even do in her condition. She was still conscious after that hit, but barely. With the last of her strength, she called out and told them to run away as fast as they could. She looked at her injured teammates, gripped her broken sword, and thought that she still had to try. They were going to get out of here alive. She was the leader of the White Blades and an aristocrat from the garden house. She said seriously that her comrades would not die, even if it killed her. The monster opened its mouth and started gathering energy. She saw it and realized it was charging mana. She wondered if it was really about to use dragon breath. She shouted that even so, she would not let it touch them. The monster fired a massive blast, but Tori used an isolation skill and stopped it right in front of her. She noticed him when he said there was no need to rush to their deaths. Isa looked at him in shock and asked who he was. He turned away and quietly said that this was really pathetic. She looked at him and could not understand who he was or what he had just done. He had blocked the dragon's breath by himself. She was about to ask something, but he spoke first. She shouted a warning, but he just raised his hand and said that everything had been going so well until this thing showed up and ruined it. He waved his hand and used a severing skill. With that one spell, he cleanly cut off the monster's head and said with a smirk that it should not have gotten in his way. She looked at him in shock and asked who the hell he was. Marin finally came to her senses and felt that this mana seemed familiar. She wondered if she had forgotten something. Right after that, she passed out again. Aisha walked up to him and thanked him for saving them. He said there was no need to thank him. She asked if she could at least know who he was and guessed that maybe he was an adventurer from another city. He handed her a bottle and said it did not matter and that she should take it. She stared at it and asked in shock if it was really a healing potion. She could not believe he was giving her something so valuable. He said yes, and she thanked him loudly, saying that now she could give first aid to her teammates. She asked how she could repay him. He said again that he did not need any gratitude. She was about to argue, but he stopped her and said that if she had not held the monster back and risked her life, he might not have made it in time. He said that instead of thanking him, she should go help her comrades. She agreed and said he was right. She ran back to the wounded and told him to wait a little. He watched her with a satisfied look and thought about how cool this was. He had shown up when there was no hope left, saved everyone, and kept his identity hidden. This was exactly what he had always dreamed of. His dream had finally come true. He told her again to take care of her comrades and said he did not need thanks. Then he used teleport and disappeared, thinking that it would be better if people just spread rumors about him instead. After that, he went to the guild. They said he was the hero who had killed a dragon all by himself, a monster that even the White Blades could not defeat. Everyone kept asking who he was. He walked up to the counter, and the guild worker told him that he was now a registered adventurer. She wished him good luck in his new job. He smiled happily and agreed. She noticed his good mood and asked if something nice had happened. He said he was just thinking about that mysterious mage who had shown up recently. She said with a worried look that it was not only the guild that was going crazy, but the whole country. They were looking for him everywhere. He got nervous and said he thought people would just be happy about a new hero appearing. She said they should not take this lightly at all. She reminded him that the mage had defeated a legendary dragon, a monster even the White Blades could not beat, and nobody even knew who he was. That made him even more uneasy. He thought to himself if it really had been a legendary dragon. He had honestly thought it was just a big lizard. He suddenly asked in an excited voice if the White Blades were really that amazing. She said they were way more than amazing and told him she would explain since he asked. She said Marin was an archmage who had mastered 3 elements. Lilithan was a powerful spear user and a former mercenary with insane strength. Saren was a scout and ambush expert who hunted monsters. Wynn was the youngest member, a fire fairy and Marin's apprentice. And their leader was Aisha Garden, the genius swordswoman known as the Slashing Princess. She added that 2 of them were 6-star adventurers, which was the highest rank possible. She said they were the strongest team not just in that city, but in the entire country. He listened in shock and realized what he had done. He had saved people like that. It had really been a legendary dragon, and now they were searching for him all over the country. Part of him was glad he had made such a big impact, but this was way too much attention. For him, this felt more like a nightmare. He had just wanted to enjoy a quiet life in another world. He started panicking and wondered what he was supposed to do now. The guild worker called his name, Tori, and asked if he was feeling okay. His face suddenly went pale. He said in a shaky voice that she did not need to worry, but inside, a wave of despair washed over him. She looked surprised and said that all of this sounded really exciting. Sometime later, Lilithan was walking through the street and asked Aisha if they were going to search for that mysterious mage again. Aisha agreed and said she still could not believe he had left without even letting them thank him. She said she was ready to do anything and that they would definitely find him. Lilithan teased her with a smirk and asked how she was planning to thank him, joking about spending the night with him. Aisha got angry and shouted at her not to make fun of her. Later on, Zerus, the head of the Adventurers Guild in the city of Boris, asked if everyone really understood what had happened. He said that dragons were among the most dangerous and terrifying monsters out there. Even 6-star adventurers struggled against them. They were true mythical creatures. And yet, that mage had killed one alone and with ease. He said that was something he had only ever read about in books and never thought he would see in real life. Aisha said her name and declared that, as the leader of the White Blades, she swore that everything she had said was true. He replied that he was not calling her a liar, but he still wondered who that mage really was. If he was their ally, then everything was fine. But if he was an enemy, then that became a problem for the whole country. Aisha said she did not know who he was, but she also said she did not think he was a bad person. 2 weeks later, in the Forest of No Return, the protagonist said that he had finally found the goblins for his quest. As a bonus, there were also rabid boars there. He smiled widely and said this was perfect. As a spatial mage, he decided to test his skills on them. A group of monsters rushed toward him. He stayed calm and said they were really impatient. He waved his hand and used the isolation skill, creating several barriers that the monsters crashed straight into. He watched it with a smile and said that the casting speed, range, and power all felt just right. He thought it was amazing that he could even create multiple barriers at the same time. He waved his hand again and thanked them for being his practice targets. Then he used the slash skill on all of them. He said this spell let him cut apart any space and was way too overpowered. Still, the more enemies there were, the more he had to focus. He told himself he needed more practice if he wanted to become the strongest, because talent alone would not be enough. After that, he went back to the guild in the city of Boris. An administrator named Eliza saw him and welcomed him. He called her by name and asked if she could confirm that he had completed the quest. He put the goblin ears on the table, and she said there were also rabid boar carcasses. She asked if he wanted to turn them into meat like last time. She told him the quest was completed and thanked him for his hard work. He thought that he had worried too much before. Even though he had stood out more than he planned, he was now calmly doing quests and living without any real trouble. Eliza smiled and said he was doing great. She said that even though he had only registered recently, he had already become a 2-star adventurer. He thanked her, but inside he felt a little nervous. Some adventurers nearby looked at him with smirks and said that this old guy would never get past 2 stars. They said old people never go very far. Eliza got annoyed and told them to stop because that was rude. One of them laughed and said it was just the truth. He said the guy could have become an adventurer at 15, but now he was already 25. He asked how long he thought he still had, calling him a retired newbie, and I think 13 years. The protagonist got angry when he heard that, and thought that 25 was still young. Eliza leaned closer to him and told him not to let those words bother him. He said it was fine, but he did not understand what he had done to make them treat him like that. She said they were just insecure and scared that a newcomer might surpass them. She pointed out that even 3-star parties could barely handle rabid boars, and he was hunting them alone. He asked her if she thought he was attracting too much attention. He said he only hunted them because they paid better than goblins, and wondered if he had gone too far. She said she would not say that, but if he had killed more than one by himself, people were obviously going to be surprised. That made him even more nervous. He thought he had come really close to standing out too much. He was glad he had decided to bring only one boar. He told himself he needed to plan every step more carefully. If he did not, his secret as a mysterious mage would be exposed. Eliza noticed that he looked uneasy and asked if something was wrong. He denied it and said he was just thinking about his life, but he looked very worried and said he felt like his heart might stop. Eliza said loudly that something was clearly bothering him. He tried to laugh it off and said this kind of thing happened to him a lot. She said with concern that this was definitely not normal. Just then, Maureen looked at him, called him a retired newbie, and asked if he might somehow be connected to that mysterious mage. Tori noticed a poster on the wall with a drawing of a man and a notice saying that anyone who saw this person should contact the guild or the White Blades. It said the person had dark hair and wore a black robe, so he was probably a man. He looked at it and thought he needed to be even more careful. A merchant called out to him and asked if he wanted to buy a magic lamp. He said it was a tool that used fire mana to make light, and that it was made from high-quality materials and would last a long time. He asked what he thought. The protagonist looked at it and said that he could use fire magic himself, but this still seemed like a good option. The merchant laughed and said he would even give him a discount. Marin walked over and cut in, saying that the stone used in it was actually very low quality. He turned to her and asked who she was. She introduced herself as a magician, and after that, they started walking down the street together. He thanked her and said he did not really know much about those kinds of things. She said it was no problem at all. She said she had just been passing by and decided to help. He suddenly remembered that they had never introduced themselves. He told her his name and said it was nice to meet her. She told him her name too, and he felt like he had heard it somewhere before, though he figured he was probably just imagining it. He asked if there was some way he could thank her, maybe by treating her to dinner. She agreed and said she would not mind having a snack. He smiled happily and said that was great, then asked her for some recommendations. They ended up at a bakery filled with all kinds of pastries. He asked what she wanted. She thought for a moment, turned around, and said she had decided and wanted all of them. He told her to wait and asked if she seriously did not see the problem with that. She got a little annoyed and said she would at least have half. He refused and said that still did not solve anything. He pointed to another counter and asked if she wanted something fried from there instead, since it looked tastier. She said he did not get it at all. She explained that even though this food looked small, it had the perfect crispy texture. It did not look like much from the outside, but inside there was juicy fruit. Each bun had a different fruit, so each one tasted different. She was about to keep explaining, but he stopped her and said he understood that she really loved it. In the end, he bought her a lot of food. She started eating right away and said it was really delicious. He took a deep breath and thought that he had spent way more money than he planned and would need to take more quests. She finished everything he bought in no time and said it was perfect. He stared at her in shock and wondered if that was even possible. She had eaten everything in just a few seconds. Marin said that tasty food should be eaten quickly and that snacks were always good. He accepted it and said he was glad she liked it. She thanked him and said he was a good person. He thought to himself that she was the type who might follow a stranger just because of candy. Then she suddenly asked why a swordsman even needed a magic tool. He was confused and asked if she meant the lamp. She said that only mages usually use things like that. He asked if some swordsmen did not have mana. She explained that mana and magical power were different things. She said mana was magic that had already taken shape, like the difference between ingredients and a finished dish. That was why she wondered why he needed a magic tool. He said it was simple. He could use magic, but he was really bad at it, so a lamp would probably help. He made a tiny flame on the tip of his finger, and her attention immediately went to his mana. She took out a chain with a crystal and asked him to pour his mana into it. He looked at it and asked what kind of black crystal it was and why she needed it. She told him to just do it. Then she asked if he could use amazing magic, like the kind that could defeat an earth dragon. He was shocked and wondered if she was talking about the same mage who had saved the white blades. She said yes. He started panicking inside and wondered where he had gone wrong. He told himself to calm down because she still had not figured it out. He pretended not to understand and said he could not do anything like that. If he could, would he really still be swinging a sword? Marin said that the stone reacted differently depending on the mage's element, and that she had never seen a color like this before. She said it looked just like hers. She explained that she could use 3 elements at once, which was why her stone shined in 3 colors. He got really nervous and realized that was what the stone was for. He thought he had been careless again. He said that this meant he could use 4 elements at once. She said that if that was true, then he was an incredible mage. He asked nervously if that was really that rare. She said most people could only use 1 element. She herself could use water, wind, and earth. He said he understood and told her she was amazing. She said she did not want praise from someone who could use more elements than her. He quickly made water appear from his fingers and said he did not mean to make fun of her. He said he could use 4 elements, but only at a level worse than a beginner. She said that was still annoying. She said magic was the one thing she did not want to lose to anyone at, because it was all she had. She looked like she was about to say something sad, but then her face suddenly changed, and she said she wanted more food and would go buy it herself. He was shocked and asked if she still had not eaten enough and what her stomach was even made of. After a while, he was still sitting there and realized that 20 minutes had already passed. He thought she would probably come back with a mountain of food. 2 adventurers walked up to him with smirks and asked why he was hanging around with her and what they had been talking about. They said he was begging her to help him rank up. He looked at them with an annoyed face and thought it was those guys again. One of them laughed and said he almost respected how shameless he was. He said he would never want to become a loser like him at that age. She came back, saw them, and thought those guys were always hanging around the guild. She wondered what they were doing there. One of them said he was disappointed in her, but also said he respected her. Then he added that he felt sorry that she was wasting her time on a slug like him, but it did not really matter. He said what else could you expect from a loser who only spent her whole life studying magic? She was clearly hurt by that. The other adventurer asked if that was not too much. The first one said it was still the truth and that she could not even hear them anyway. The protagonist stood up and told him to take it back. The adventurer got angry and asked what he had just said. He mocked him and asked if the old man was trying to lecture him. He said he could say whatever he wanted about him, but he should not laugh at people who worked hard. That just made them even angrier. They shouted at him and called him a freak, asking if he even knew what happened to people who talked back to them. Marin walked over and asked what exactly would happen. They froze when they heard her voice. She looked at them seriously and said she really wanted to hear it. They turned pale and said they would never do anything. They ran away in a hurry, shouting that they needed to get out of there. He looked at her and asked if she had heard everything. She said yes, and that she had just come back. She thanked him. He smiled and said he had just said what he thought. He told her that she really was an amazing person. She looked at him and asked why he thought that. He said it was because she worked so hard at studying magic, and he was honestly jealous. He said he could never do that himself. He remembered his old life and thought about how he had always made excuses for himself and never really tried hard at anything. He said that was why he thought she was special and a wonderful person. She looked surprised and asked if he really thought she was wonderful. He got embarrassed and said he meant her personality and told her not to think anything weird. She turned away and said it did not matter. She didn't like being praised by someone who was better than her. He had apologized, and she had smiled a little, looking embarrassed, and said that for some reason it didn't sound so insulting. He had walked closer and said in a worried voice that, anyway, his magic was weak and he couldn't become a mage. She had agreed and said that his magic was weak and that he wasn't a mage. He had gotten angry because of her words and thought that, for some reason, hearing that from her really irritated him. She had handed him a black crystal and told him to take it. He had been confused but still took the crystal. Then she had started to leave and said goodbye to him. He had asked her to wait, and she had slowed down, turned around, and asked what his name was. He had asked if he hadn't already told her. Then he had said his name and rank, and she had turned away and said that she was bad at remembering names, but she would try to remember his. He had said, looking confused, that he really hoped so. She had looked at him and said that everything was fine because she was interested in him. He had felt embarrassed by her words, started to get nervous, and wondered what she meant. She had started to leave again, said goodbye, and he had thought that he probably needed to take more quests. After that, Tori had gone back to the guild. Eliza had greeted him and asked how she could help. She had noticed his expression and asked what had happened to him. He had said with a very sad face that his heart and his wallet couldn't take it anymore. She had gotten worried and said loudly that it sounded really terrible. He had said that was why he had come to take a quest. She had said that there were almost none left, meaning the 2-star quests. He had been surprised and asked how that had happened. She had said that the guys who laughed at him probably took them all just to mess with him. Only the quest about the cobalt lair was left, but she didn't recommend doing it alone. Beating them was already hard, and finding the lair wasn't easy either. He had understood and said that then he would take a 1-star quest instead. Marin had walked up to them and said that she would take that quest with him. He had been surprised to see her, and she had calmly greeted them. Eliza had asked if she was really going to take the quest and whether she had recovered from her fight with the dragon. Marin had calmly said that she was fine now, so she needed the practice. There shouldn't be any problem if she went with him, right? Eliza had said it was fine. The protagonist had asked why she wanted to go with him and wondered if she was watching him to see if he was the mysterious mage. Marin had said that she thought he was in trouble. He had thought, looking worried, that he would just pay her with food. Then he had thought, relieved, that she was probably just a food-obsessed maniac. She had pointed to the side and asked if, since they were there, they could eat some wild boar steak. He had asked if she hadn't just eaten a mountain of food. She had said she had a separate stomach for that. He had thought that her stomach was the most amazing thing in the world. Eliza had come over and asked when he had met her. He had asked, looking confused, if she was famous. She had been shocked by that question and said that she had already told him before. She was the Witch of the White Blades, a 6-star archmage. After that, he had sat down at the table and asked how long the quest would take. Marin had sat in front of him, thought for a moment, and said that it usually took 2 or 3 days. But today, they only needed to find the size and location of the lair, so it seemed like they could finish in 1 day. He had said, a bit worried, that he understood, and that he was glad to hear that. She had looked at him and asked if he was nervous since it was his first exploration quest. He had agreed, and she had said that he could relax because she would be with him. Even though she looked unreliable, she was still a 6-star archmage from the White Blades. He had thanked her, but at the same time he had thought that this was exactly why he was nervous. He was going to spend the whole day with someone who was hunting him. When night had fallen, he had gone back to the inn. A girl named Lip had greeted him and said that he was probably tired after work. He had greeted her back and said that she was always so nice to him. She had laughed and said that it was her job. He had thought with a satisfied smile that she was so sweet and that she really healed the soul. The owner of the inn in Goliath had noticed him and said that dinner had been ready for a long time and asked if he wanted to eat before going upstairs. He had walked over and said that he probably would, but first he needed to leave his things in his room. She had run up to them with a happy look and asked if he knew that she had helped cook. She was great, right? Her father had hugged her and said that she was the best, his pride and joy, and that he was about to cry. He had looked away, noticed that Tori was looking at him, and asked what he wanted. He asked if Tori wanted to say something. Tori refused and said that he had just thought she was very sweet. Goliath got angry at that and said he wasn't going to make him his son-in-law, and that he would beat him up if he tried. Tori denied it and thought that this place was his base, the Peace Inn outside the city. It couldn't be called a prosperous place, but after everything that happened with the Earth Dragon, such a quiet spot was perfect for him. He remembered something, handed Goliath a package, and said that it was the meat of a mad boar. Goliath thanked him and said that Tori really helped them a lot. His daughter had started smiling much more often, and he was grateful for that. Tori said with a big smile that there was no need to thank him, and that a smile was more than enough reward. Goliath said loudly, still not trusting him, that he didn't even need to try to win him over because he would never give his daughter to him. Tori calmed him down and said he didn't want that, and he thought to himself that he really liked the people here. The next day, he was practicing with his sword in the yard and said that it was enough for the day. Goliath came over and said that he had been training like always since morning. Tori said with a smile that if he had even a little bit of talent, he didn't want to waste it. Goliath laughed and said that this was how a real man should think. Then he asked if Tori had heard the recent rumors. The White Blades were desperately looking for someone, and people said that some mysterious magician had appeared. Tori said that it was hard to believe that such a magician really existed, but he thought that it was already his mistake from the first day. Even the rumors had reached this place. Goliath said that he had heard that even the witch Marin herself had admitted in tears that she was weaker than him. What kind of monster had appeared? Tori was shocked when he heard that, and thought that they were calling him a monster now. It was just a rumor that he had made her cry, right? After some time, he was walking with Marin into the forest. She called him and asked if he had heard the rumor that was going around. the one about her crying and admitting defeat. He felt worried when he heard that, and she said with an annoyed look that she would never forgive that magician. That made him even more nervous, and he wondered why she was angry at him. She said that she would at least stay angry until he treated her to some fancy sweets. He relaxed a little and thought that he was glad she loved sweets so much. He called out to her and said that rumors were fine, but they probably shouldn't relax. She said that it was fine because she had already set up a barrier. He looked around, noticed it, and said that now that he looked carefully, he could actually see it a little. He asked when she had done that. She said it was a water barrier and that the local monsters couldn't break through it. He was surprised and said that he didn't even know something like that existed. She chuckled and asked if she wasn't amazing. He pretended not to understand and asked, "More amazing than who?" That meant he was stronger than her, but it wasn't really fair to compare his strange ability with her proper skills. Even so, he was curious. How strong were six-star adventurers anyway? Was she really that strong? She looked like a normal, sweet girl with a childish personality. No one would guess she was an archmage. Then he heard a growl and nervously asked if it was a monster. Marin denied it and said it was just her stomach. He quickly apologized and said that he should have guessed since it was already lunchtime. She called him an idiot, and he said they would eat right away. After that, they sat down to rest, and Tori asked if it was really okay to eat sweets while working, even if he was new to this. Marin looked at him and said that he didn't understand anything. This food was a carefully made ration with perfect balance. It had the right calories, all the needed vitamins, minerals, iron, and other good stuff. It was not only healthy, but also very tasty. The place she bought it from made rations for adventurers. He apologized and said that he was just a clueless idiot. She was about to keep talking about food, but he stopped her and said that he wanted to talk about that rumor. Why were the White Blades so desperate to find this mage? Were they really that eager to thank him? She said that wasn't the only reason. They simply couldn't ignore the existence of such a powerful mage. He said that he didn't think the guy was bad. Was it really such a big problem? Did they have to take him down? She said that it was a huge problem, and it didn't matter whether he was good or bad. He had power like the heroes from legends, and it was dangerous to just leave him alone. He was shocked by that and thought that this meant he was on the same level as some heroes. That sounded pretty amazing. But he also thought that if his identity was found out, he couldn't stay a mysterious mage anymore. Then what was he even doing here? She was one of the people trying to find him, right? He asked her if that meant they absolutely had to find him. She said that she wanted to meet him in person. That caught his interest, and he asked why. She said, annoyed, that first of all, there was a rumor going around that he was stronger than her, and she had to punish him for spreading something like that. That made him nervous, and he thought that he wasn't the one who spread those rumors. She then said that, second, his mana felt familiar to her. He didn't understand, and asked what she meant by familiar. Marin said that she didn't really know herself, but maybe she would understand when she met him. That was why, if he learned anything, he should tell her. He agreed and hoped that she would drop the topic and move on. Later, they reached the kobold's lair. He looked at it from inside the bushes and said that, in terms of strength, they were about the same as goblins. However, they were faster and worked much better together, so even three-star adventurers couldn't beat them that easily. Marin agreed, but said that he had forgotten one important thing. They had a very strong sense of smell. He asked if that meant they had already noticed them. She told him not to worry because the wind wasn't blowing toward them, so the monsters couldn't smell them. He said a bit nervously that they still should be careful, because the monsters were coming this way. She turned to him and said that she remembered she had some delicious food in her bag. Marin calmly told him not to worry because she was here. He shouted that this was all her fault. She ran forward and told him to just watch. She ran into the open field and was about to use magic, but she stumbled and fell. He called out to her in worry and thought that she really was just like a little girl. He started pulling his sword from its sheath and shouted that there was no choice and that he would handle them. He rushed at the nearest monster and killed it in one strike. Then he noticed another kobold running straight at him and thought that if they attacked head-on, he should be ready for a tough fight. The monster suddenly stopped. His attack missed, and he realized in surprise that he had been tricked. Marin saw it and shouted a warning about an attack from behind. A kobold hit his back with a strong blow, and he was shocked. So that was their plan. He turned around quickly, swung his sword hard, and shouted that they shouldn't get cocky. He felt that the damage wasn't too bad, but their teamwork was definitely dangerous. In a one-on-one fight, he could handle them with just his sword. He looked toward the lair and saw a whole group of monsters rushing toward him. He started to panic and thought this was bad. There were too many of them, and he couldn't use spatial magic. He told himself to stop thinking about that. This wasn't the time to hesitate. He thought he was about to die. But at the last moment, Marin cast a water prison spell and stopped the monsters. She apologized and said that he had gotten hurt because of her. He turned to her and told her not to worry because he was fine. She asked if she had done it right, and he nodded and said in surprise that 6-star adventurers were really amazing. Then she said it wasn't over yet and used a giant water bomb spell. She started gathering an enormous ball of water above her head, and he stared at it in shock, wondering what that was. She threw the huge water ball into the monster lair and apologized, saying that they were only supposed to scout the place today, but she ended up wiping them all out. In the end, everything turned out fine. They had won. Tori looked at the destroyed lair and thought it was insanely cool. He realized that he had seriously underestimated the White Blade's adventurers. People that strong were hunting him, and they still couldn't beat the Earth Dragon, yet he had killed it in one blow. Marin said that now it was time to go eat. He was surprised and asked if she even had any food left. After a while, Aisha said that it was rare for Marin to be interested in someone. Marin sat in front of her and said that she was surprised too, but that he was really funny and interesting. She said they should get to know this newbie adventurer better. Aisha looked at the protagonist, the rookie adventurer Tori. People in the guild also called him the retired adventurer. She had been investigating him for the past few days. He was one of the few people who had caught her interest. She trusted Marin's judgment, but with the recent arrival of a mysterious mage and the new leader of the White Blades, she felt she had to keep an eye on him. It was kind of funny that she was watching him while he had no idea. She smiled to herself and looked away from him. He noticed her and wondered why the beautiful knight he had saved recently was following him, and who had even taught her to stalk someone like that. His goal in this world was to become the strongest mysterious mage, and then enjoy spreading rumors about himself over a drink. But on his very first day, he had already stood out way more than he wanted. Still, he wasn't going to give up on that plan. He told himself he would be careful and not stand out. So why was someone following him? And why was she so bad at it? There was no way she could figure out who he really was. He tried to reassure himself. He had changed his voice when he saved them, and he had even used spatial magic to hide his appearance. They shouldn't have seen anything that could lead them to any conclusions. For now, he just needed to avoid drawing attention. Lost in thought, he didn't even notice when he ran into Marin. She looked at him in surprise and asked what he was doing here. He jumped and blurted out, "Miss Marin?" She let out an annoyed sigh and asked why he was calling her that and told him to stop. He apologized, thinking that she had probably gone on another quest with him just for food. His reputation was already completely ruined. Everyone was saying he was always with Marin and that he had bribed her. Of course, it was dangerous since she could expose him, so he didn't want to get too close to her. Marin told him that they were friends, so he shouldn't call her something so formal. He apologized again. She was his first friend in this world, and he didn't want to push her away. She asked him if he was free today. He was surprised. Why was she asking that? Still, yes, he was free. Marin stepped closer, touched his shoulder, and said in a sneaky voice, asking if he wanted to do something bad. He hadn't expected that at all and looked at her in confusion. Aisha almost screamed when she heard that. Her imagination immediately went wild and pictured Marin covered in honey, asking him to taste it. What did she mean? In what way? Something bad? This wasn't the time to just watch. She had to stop this before Marin said something even worse. He looked at Marin and said that, just in case, she should explain what she meant. Aisha was shocked. He just asked her straight out. Marin looked confused and said, "Wasn't it obvious?" Today they were going to eat a super sweet calorie bomb. A real explosion of calories. So many calories that it would be better not to move afterward. Aisha was confused, so that was what she meant. He licked his lips and said that he knew this was coming. They went to a dessert shop and ordered sweets. Marin ordered a huge portion, then looked at his small bowl and asked in surprise if he didn't want a big super sweet dessert. He said that a small portion was enough for him. Aisha sat at the next table and listened carefully. Suddenly, Marin looked up from her dessert and said that Sorin had returned. He didn't understand at first and then asked if she meant the vice leader of the White Blades. Marin nodded and said that she did. Tori said he was glad to hear that. Marin added that the White Blades would soon be active again. He said that it was great news, and in his heart he thought that at least things would finally be a bit more peaceful. Marin said sadly that this also meant she wouldn't be able to spend as much time with him. That surprised him. Did she really value him that much as a friend? After a short silence, she turned to him and shyly asked if she could try his dessert. He said it was fine, but for some reason he still felt a little disappointed. He pushed the plate toward her and told her to just finish it. She asked hesitantly if he was sure, and then said he should try it too. She picked up a spoonful and tried to feed him. He quickly told her to stop and said he could do it himself. She started urging him to hurry up and try it already. He sighed, said he would, and opened his mouth. Just then, Win, a fire fairy from the White Blades, flew over, pointed at him, and shouted angrily, asking who he was and telling him to get away from her teacher. He stared at her in shock. Marin told Win to calm down and said that Tori was her friend. Win said angrily that she didn't get it and that he was just using her. Marin said she believed him. Win couldn't believe how easily her teacher trusted him and wondered if she even realized how kind and innocent she was. Tori thought to himself that everyone kept treating Win like Marin's crazy student. Win then decided to pull a trick and told Marin that they had an urgent meeting and had to go back right away. Marin wanted to argue, but Tori told her not to worry about him. He said he would be lonely, sure, but he would get over it. Marin said shyly that she hadn't even finished eating yet. He laughed and told her to forgive him and said it was his own fault for being distracted. After all, it was her. Marin told him that she would miss him. He thanked her, feeling confused, and said it sounded like she was saying it on purpose, which only made things more awkward. After saying goodbye to her, he went on his way. As he walked, he thought that if people that important kept getting involved with him, he would never be able to stay a mysterious mage. He had only managed to act like a mysterious hero on his first day, and now everything was already getting messy. At this rate, he felt like he hadn't achieved anything at all. Then he noticed Aisha and felt annoyed when he realized she was still following him. Suddenly, a man stepped in front of him, and just looking at him felt like bad news. The man asked if he was Tori, the retired newbie. Tori got ready to fight and asked irritably who he was, saying that it was rude not to introduce himself when he already knew his name. The man pulled out his sword and said it was his fault. Tori looked at him and felt something strange. Was that Mana? The man raised his sword over his head, ready to strike, and said that since Tori seemed interested in her, he shouldn't hold back and should go all out. Tori was confused about how he was going to attack from that distance. The man suddenly rushed at him and said that it was too late, but he would introduce himself anyway. He was about to strike, but at that moment, Aisha jumped in and blocked the attack, standing in front of Tori. The man shouted in shock, asking what she was doing. Aisha asked calmly if she should introduce herself too. She moved her hand away from her face and proudly said that she was the leader of the White Blades and told him her name. The man asked in confusion why she was protecting him. She said that was a stupid question and asked if he really needed a reason to protect someone. The man asked in disbelief if she had even cut him. At that moment, most of his clothes suddenly fell off, and he was completely shocked. Aisha put her sword away and said that she was sorry and that maybe a proper lady shouldn't have done that. The man grabbed his slipping clothes and cursed, saying that he couldn't beat a white blade. Then he ran away, shouting that he would remember this. Aisha said calmly that she definitely wouldn't forget a man running away in his underwear, but she wondered who he even was. That made her a bit uneasy. Tori looked at her and apologized, then said that she was Aisha from the White Blades, right? He introduced himself and thanked her for saving him. She said that so he was that Tori she had heard about, the one Marin spent so much time with. She added that she was there completely by chance and asked if he really thought it was just a coincidence. After all, she had just saved Marin's friend. What a happy and totally random coincidence. Tori smiled and said that she was right, but inside he thought that she was a terrible liar. Aisha told him that when she looked at him more closely, she felt like they might have met somewhere before. He answered carefully that they hadn't, and she looked confused. He quickly changed the topic and said that she had been curious about him, right? Aisha suddenly came back to her senses and said that she needed to report this to the guild right away and that she had to go. Before leaving, she looked at him and said that they would definitely meet again. Then she left. He stood there thinking about why she had followed him in the first place. Still, even with his cheating abilities, he wouldn't have been able to react to that guy's attack, and during the quest he hadn't been much help either. In this world, you could die at any moment. If he hadn't been saved, he would have already died twice. He couldn't even properly protect himself. He started blaming himself hard. At this rate, he would never become the strongest. His self-criticism kept piling up, and he felt like a total disgrace. He went back to the inn. The next day, he left, thinking that he really needed to get serious and work much harder. To do that, he had to take action. Goliath and Lip wished him a good day and told him to be careful. When he arrived at the guild and talked to Eliza, she looked surprised and said that he wanted to take the exam for the 3rd star. He said that he wanted to get to 3 stars as fast as possible. Eliza apologized and told him that promotion to 3 stars was a group escort quest, so he couldn't do it alone. He hadn't expected that. She explained that, to be honest, they didn't really recommend people working alone in general. Because of that, solo quests were limited, and the promotion quest had to be done in a group. They were mainly testing teamwork. He said he understood, but since he always worked alone, he asked what he was supposed to do. Eliza suggested that he could team up with another solo adventurer or temporarily join another group. He turned to the other adventurers and asked loudly if anyone would help him with the promotion quest. The place immediately exploded with complaints. Who would want to team up with someone like him? People said this was his punishment for getting close to Marin and that he should go ask the White Blades for help. Someone even asked why Marin didn't just team up with him. He thought they were all just jealous of his connection with Marin. He turned back to Eliza and asked what he should do now. She answered awkwardly that she wished she knew, and maybe he should wait until new people arrived who hadn't heard rumors about him yet. He wondered how long that would take. Months? Just then, he heard Aisha's voice saying that maybe he should go with them instead. He looked up and saw the entire White Blades team standing there. Marin greeted him. Wynn glared at him. Saren looked at him without much interest, and Lylon was smiling brightly. Aisha asked if they wouldn't make good teammates. He was completely confused. Why were they here again? Why did he always end up working with them? Meanwhile, somewhere else, Ekans was speaking to his subordinate. He said that the boy had made a huge mistake, and that he had told him to watch, not attack the protagonist. Since he had already picked a fight, he should have dragged the target back instead. Wasn't that what he had taught him? The subordinate, trembling in front of his boss, apologized and swore that he wouldn't fail again. Ekans didn't listen and cut off his head on the spot, saying that he didn't give second chances to idiots. He ordered another subordinate to get the body out of his sight and to spread even more bad rumors about the newcomer. It would be easier for them if the protagonist couldn't team up with anyone. The subordinate accepted the order. He added flatteringly that his master enjoyed bullying the weak. Ekans replied angrily and asked if he should remind him who had made him so obsessed with women. The subordinate got embarrassed and said that he remembered it perfectly. Ekans told him to do as he was told and to slowly corner Tori. Finally, someone useful had appeared. If everything went as planned, he, the king of snakes from the snake den, would finally be able to have some fun with those beauties. Back at the guild, after Aisha asked about being good teammates, Tori realized that the White Blades were going to be his partners for the quest. That was pretty much the worst outcome he could imagine. He tried to refuse and said that he didn't want to waste their time. Aisha smiled and told him not to worry, since they didn't mind. There were rumors about him going around, and those rumors concerned them too. She wanted to clear them up. Confused, he asked her what she meant. She looked at him seriously and said that she didn't trust him. The adventurers around them got excited when they heard that. They started shouting that this was great and that the leader of the White Blades hadn't disappointed them. They told her not to let him rest for even a second and hoped he wouldn't run away. He cursed inside and thought that he had no choice but to go with them. A little later, Eliza came out to the courtyard and explained the details. She said that the mission was to escort an important person, the daughter of a noble from the city of Berea, to a neighboring city. The important person was actually her, and this was the exam scenario. She was playing the role seriously. Aisha said that everything would be fine and that they would protect her even if it cost them their lives. Wynn agreed. Eliza grabbed Aisha's hands and thanked her, then asked if they really could escort her safely. Aisha replied that it would be an honor. Tori still didn't really understand what was going on and said that since they were done joking around, they should get going. Aisha commented on how serious he was. Eliza got annoyed and said they weren't joking at all and that this was a real exam. Aisha laughed and said that now she understood, because she really had thought it was a joke at first. Then she turned to Tori and told him that they would be working together for 4 days and hoped they would have a good cooperation. He forced a smile and thanked her for agreeing. She looked at him closely and told him not to worry so much. They were there to help him, and during the mission they would follow his instructions. He said he would do his best, though he wondered if she was planning to watch him the whole time. He suggested that they talk about the plan. He said that since they were Eliza's bodyguards, they should surround her carriage. Marin and Lilithan were going to be the main attackers if a fight broke out. Both girls agreed right away. He went on to say that Siren would handle scouting ahead. The girl showed him a piece of paper with just one word written on it: accepted. He was a bit surprised that she answered in writing. He had heard she didn't like men much. He then put Wynn in charge of watching their back. She immediately complained because she didn't want to be separated from her teacher. Tori told her that her teacher's life depended on her guarding the rear. Someone reacted in shock and said that sounded really cool. He turned to Aisha and told her they would ride in the carriage together and take turns leading the horses. Then he talked about the route. The shortest way was through the eastern mountain path, but the monsters there were stronger. On top of that, because of the recent rain, there was a risk of avalanches. Since safety came first, they decided to take the western route instead. The monsters there were weaker and there were fewer bandits. Isha said it was a good plan and that she understood everything. Eliza quietly agreed and wrote something in her notebook. He couldn't help wondering if she was evaluating him, and it reminded him of how he used to try to please everyone at work. Tori said it was time to get going. Marin asked him to grab something tasty. He told her he'd do it later. Wynne protested, thinking he should accept her teacher's gratitude. The thought of what was waiting ahead made him nervous. After they had been on the road for a while, Marin told him he had done well. He asked what she meant. She said he had given clear instructions and gathered information properly. He was surprised and asked if that wasn't normal. Marin told him it wasn't and said she never would have believed a rookie could handle his first exam so smoothly. He thanked her shyly and thought his people skills from work must have helped. Suddenly, Marin apologized to him. Tori looked confused and wondered what that was about. Marin said that because she was always hanging around him, his reputation had taken a hit. He laughed and said that wasn't her fault, and that if anything, he should be the one worried about damaging her reputation. Right then, Wynne shouted that he was a monster and told him not to try to seduce her teacher. He said in a panic that he hadn't meant anything like that. He then wondered out loud why she wasn't in the rear guard and said she was watching everything with her magical senses, so it was fine. Magical senses? Wynne asked in shock, saying she didn't even know he could do that. Tori apologized and said he wasn't very good at magic. Marin explained in simple terms that it was basic magic that let you sense magical power, and she thought he could learn it. She added that she'd give him a few lessons. He was surprised and asked if she was serious. Wynne screamed no, saying her bond with her teacher was falling apart right in front of her. He thought this girl was honestly scary. Lilithan told Wynne to go back to her post and tossed her away. Wynne flew through the air and shouted that she'd remember this. He told Lilithan she was incredibly strong. She thanked him and said he was strong too, right? He said nervously that he wasn't. She laughed and said her instincts told her otherwise. Tori said he was just an ordinary 2-star swordsman. Lilithan said not to let him be modest because her instincts were always right. He panicked and broke free from her arms. Then she asked if they could spend the night together. He froze and asked what she meant by just the two of them. At that moment, Marin told Lilithan not to take Tori because she was the one who had scheduled his magic lesson. Lilithan apologized for being rude. Marin said sadly that he was the one who should be apologizing and asked if he had already forgotten their promise. He was shocked and didn't even know what to say. He also wondered why she was sulking. Marin said she wasn't sulking. For a moment, he felt like all of this was driving him crazy. After a while, he told everyone they could take a short break since they were moving at a good pace. Aisha asked for his attention and said she had noticed something. When they were fighting monsters, he hadn't been using a cloak. He asked what she meant. She said she had thought so, and that since he was a beginner, it wasn't strange. She explained that a cloak was a technique that strengthened the body with mana. It wasn't very difficult, and anyone with mana could learn it. The stronger your mana, the stronger your body became. He said he understood and realized that strange feeling he'd had before must have been what they called a cloak. Aisha then asked if she should teach him since she was there. Tori happily agreed. When the time came, he took his sword and asked what he should do next. Aisha said she wanted to spar with him first to get a feel for him. He was surprised and asked what that had to do with training. She said that when swordsmen crossed blades, they got to know each other better, and for them, it was like a conversation only they could understand. Tori thought that sounded really cool and wondered if swordsmen were always like that. Lilithan asked what was going on and said something interesting was finally happening. Eliza said the important thing was that they could finish the exam later. Wynne said she didn't want to see a pool of blood. Aisha asked what kind of nightmare she was imagining. He noticed more and more people had gathered around. The leader said Marin had another task and that everyone else should allow the sparring to happen. She asked him if he was ready. He said he was, even though he felt he couldn't refuse. Marin said that since both sides were ready, they could start. Tori could tell the difference in their skill was huge, but this was a rare chance to see what his training had done. He thought he might at least survive one hit. Aisha rushed at him, and he didn't even have time to block. She asked if he had relaxed because the sword wasn't real and reminded him she had said at the guild that she didn't trust him yet. She told him to get into a proper stance and not to worry because they had plenty of healing potions. Tori felt tired and thought there was no way he could win or even land a single hit. Watching the fight, Lilithan yawned and said the boy didn't stand a chance and that he had gone down way too easily. Win said he couldn't even hold his sword properly against Aisha. He heard someone mutter, "What a whiner," and in his head he told them to shut up. They could say whatever they wanted, but he was just an ordinary guy with only what God had given him. He also didn't want to hurt Aisha by accident. He planned to just give up and let them go back to the exam. Then he heard Marin speak in a firm voice and say that Tori wasn't a whiner. She said Aisha was really strong and there was no way he could beat her, but she would still cheer for him and wished him good luck. He thought that might help. There was probably no point in trying, but he couldn't bring himself to run away without at least doing something. He used his power, and Aisha cried out in surprise. She couldn't believe he had mana. She didn't even realize how he got next to her. She barely managed to raise her sword to block, but it didn't help. He hit her and her weapon broke. The leader looked stunned. Lilithan shouted happily that he had actually landed a hit. Marin said it was amazing and that she was really impressed. Win got angry and started calling him names. Aisha, still shocked, said he was using a cloak. He said in confusion that he really was using it, and that must have been why he suddenly felt so much power. She couldn't believe what she was hearing and asked if he had been using it without realizing. He said he didn't really understand it either, and that it felt like he was in a daze. Then he smiled and said it was because Marin had wished him luck. Aisha looked at him like she didn't get it. Marin said that meant it was all thanks to her, and then joked that he owed her a calorie bomb. He got upset and wondered how much sugar could even fit in her tiny body. She looked at him and asked if he was serious. Right then, Aisha told him to focus and stop relaxing, but she was the one who had relaxed. She hadn't noticed that her shirt had come undone from the hit and that everything was showing. Lilithan said she agreed and that their leader was being way too careless. Win, almost in tears, pointed it out to her. Aisha looked down and realized her clothes were torn in a few places. She covered herself and angrily asked him how he could be so low. He got flustered and tried to explain that it wasn't on purpose and that it was an accident. Someone said, "Good," and he told her she should hurry up and change. He also pointed out that her wooden sword was broken. She told him not to worry because she had a spare. Tori wondered nervously if she was trying to kill him. Marin joked that he liked appetizing curves, and he shouted for her to stop joking at a time like this. After they walked for a while, he noticed it was getting dark and suggested they set up camp for the night. Lilithan said it was great and that they would drink all night. When he answered sarcastically, she grumbled that he really knew how to ruin things. He said it wasn't like that and that they just had to protect precious Lady Eliza. The girl smiled at him and said she didn't know he thought of her that way. Aisha said she got it now. He protested, but she said it was part of the exam script. He wondered if it really was just that, since she had exposed him during their sparring and seemed to be holding a grudge. He said again that it had been an accident. He lit the fire by making flames with his finger and muttered that he didn't get why she was so angry. Still, he knew he would have reacted the same way if he were in her place. He thought that once he dealt with the white blades, it would be easier to play the role of a mysterious spatial mage. Then he heard someone scream and panicked, wondering if bandits or monsters were attacking. When he ran over, he was shocked to see the girls taking a bath. When they noticed him, they burst out laughing. He said he had thought they were under attack. Marin asked if he had come to spy on them. He said he had come because he heard a scream and was worried. Lilithan laughed, apologized, and said Aisha had screamed for no real reason when she grabbed her. Aisha got mad and said not to blame her for that. Lilithan said she couldn't help it and just wanted to fool around, and asked how anyone could resist with so much temptation around. Aisha snapped back and asked if that was an excuse to grab her like that. He asked where Siren was. Just then, an arrow hit a tree with a note, saying she'd wash later and not to worry. Aisha came over and said that after his training with Marin, she wanted to talk to him alone. He knew he couldn't refuse and agreed, thinking to himself that he probably only had a few hours left to live. He went back to the fire, and after a while, the leader came. She looked completely different without her gear, and he thought he could see her beauty even more clearly. She noticed him staring and asked if something was on her face. He got embarrassed and said no, nothing, while scolding himself in his head. Then she said it was time to settle things. She said she wanted to apologize for calling him a newbie and for how she had acted. She bowed her head and said she was truly sorry. She said she hadn't thought he was a bad person from the start. She just needed to be sure. She also said that Marin seemed really happy when she talked about him. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. She said she hoped he wouldn't hold a grudge. As the leader of the White Blades, she should have tried to understand him better. Marin spent a lot of time with him, and she had to protect her. Protecting her comrades was the most important thing to her. He finally understood, and that was why she had pretended to dislike him. He said now he got why everyone respected her. She laughed and said it was an honor to hear that. She said that, in short, she had been wrong and apologized again. He said there was no need and that he understood, considering his reputation at the guild. She said she had also acted that way to protect him, because if she had been friendly with him, his reputation might have gotten even worse. Still, she told him not to misunderstand, and said she would never forgive him for seeing her naked twice. He said again that it had been an accident, but she said she still wouldn't forgive him. He told her he was really sorry. Later, when all the girls were asleep, he stared at the fire and thought that he still had some time while he was on watch and that he should try something. After all, Marin had taught him how to use magical senses. He suddenly got an idea. He moved a little away from the camp and used his detection skill. Right away, he could see every living thing in the forest, including his sleeping companions. He felt excited. So this was how it worked. He could clearly see everything around him. Spatial detection magic was way better than normal magical sense. Magical sense only let you feel mana, but detection showed everything directly. Then he realized he was basically peeking at sleeping girls and felt awkward. He told himself to be more careful with this spell. Gripping his weapon, he decided this wasn't the time to think about that. There was something more important to deal with. He looked at the monsters he had found and said he needed to take care of them. It wasn't like he hated all monsters, but he definitely held a grudge against kobolds. He told the monsters not to hold it against him and used the cloak to practice. When he attacked the first one, he immediately felt the hit was weak, but the monster still got cut apart. So, this was the power of the cloak. The other monsters scattered in different directions. He realized they had split up to come at him from both sides. He thought they were way too smart for monsters and that fighting them head-on was a stupid idea. After taking down the second one, he noticed a third trying to run away and chased after it. Thanks to the cloak, his speed kept increasing. When he caught up, he shouted that it wouldn't get away and cut its head off with one swing. Looking around, he said it was almost funny how easy it had been. The feeling was amazing. He wanted to shout about it, but no one had seen what he did. Then he felt more monsters coming from behind and muttered that their friends were still around. He figured he might as well keep going. When he looked around, he was shocked by how many there were. There were way too many. He couldn't believe it. There were even more than in their lair. Even with the cloak, there was no way he could beat all of them. His mind raced. Should he use spatial magic? But if he used it near the white blades, they might notice something was off. Just then, he heard Aisha's voice asking why he was acting so reckless. When he turned around, he saw all his companions there. Lilithin smiled and said he was having a party without inviting them. He stared at them in shock. Were they all awake? Aisha said they could talk about it later, and that for now they should deal with their so-called guests. Lilithin got ready to fight and announced the start of the party, then charged straight into the enemies. It really had been a while since they had any fun. Monsters tried to sneak up on her, but she took them out without even looking back. Sar said that if they were throwing a party, they needed some alcohol, then activated her great cycle and rushed in, smashing monsters left and right. Marin said that if there was no alcohol, maybe they could pick some up along the way, and she attacked with everything she had. Wynn watched their speed and power and said they should pour her a drink too, then joined in and fired her fire cannon. When it was over, she yawned and said it was a perfect way to wake up. Aisha called out and said there was no need to go that far. Wynn looked at her in surprise, and she added that they had already done more than enough and that the party was over. The girls looked around at the battlefield, and monsters were lying everywhere. He was completely stunned. They had wiped out a whole horde in no time, enemies he hadn't stood a chance against. This was the White Blades, the guild's strongest team. He thanked them shyly for saving him. Aisha said there was no need to thank them and that she hadn't really done anything. Then she asked why he hadn't called them earlier. She said she understood he had learned the cloak quickly, but fighting that many enemies alone was reckless. He apologized and said he was really sorry. She told him to think more about his actions, but also said she was glad he was safe. She looked at him seriously and said he was their friend now and that he could rely on them. Those words really hit him. He called her by name and promised it wouldn't happen again. She said they would always have his back. He then said he wanted to tell her something. He wasn't sure how important it was, but when he had used his magical sense, he had noticed something strange. He didn't mention that he had actually found it with detection. She asked what he meant by a suspicious figure. She said she hadn't noticed anything unusual. He said that after he killed a few kobolds, it was gone, and that was why he wanted to tell her. She looked surprised and said it might have been an adventurer or a merchant, since that road was used often, but it also could have been a bandit. She told him that if he noticed anything like that again, he should call her right away. He smiled and thanked her for listening. She said it was important to speak up about things like that, then winked and joked that if anything happened, he shouldn't peek into the tent. He felt embarrassed and promised her. He thought to himself that the guilt from earlier had come back to haunt him. She looked at him suspiciously and asked what kind of reaction that was. When he tried to explain, she cut him off and told him not to make excuses. High up on a mountain, someone was watching all of this. The man said it looked like Tori was much closer to them than they had thought, and that this needed to be reported right away.